You're listening to Turning a Page on Good Morning Delhi with Sarthak.
And what a lovely thing you're doing, lending us an ear. It's always nice to be heard in these cacophonous times. And Turning a Page is where we try and see if we can seduce you to into falling in love with the written word, that fragrance that comes when you open a book and the ideas float out. And the new book that we're talking about is Ashoka, Portrait of a Philosopher King. And we've got two gentlemen in the studio because of whom the prestige of the studio has gone up notches, I tell you. Mr. Patrick Olivelle is here. He's, of course, the author, and the incredible Ramachandra Guha. As I said, sir, I'm a huge fan, so I'm going to gush just a little bit before I start the questions. That's important. He's, of course, the series editor for this series called Indian Lives, part of which, of course, is Ashoka. Mr. Olivelle, historical figures seem to be both holy cows and hot potatoes nowadays, is it not? I mean, choosing Ashoka, what was the idea?
Well, it was chosen for me.
Mr. Guha.
So Patrick is one of the truly great scholars of ancient India.
Yeah.
And he's written many classical works on Buddhism, Hinduism, law, social structure, political theory, and we've been in correspondence for several years. This is the first time we're meeting, actually. Yes, we met yesterday for the first time.
Oh, really?
For the first time.
Okay.
He lives in Austin, I live in Bangalore, and the pandemic came. But we've been corresponding for many years. And when I launched this series, I wanted Patrick to be part of it. So I suggested to him, I said, you spent your lifetime, you could say, in and around Ashoka. Part of it, he's done other things too, but much of your work has been circling Ashoka from here and there.
Right.
And his period, and the polity and the moral thought of that time. Why don't you think of writing a life? And then he has produced this magnificent piece of
Excellent.
work.
And so, Mr. Olivelle, a work of erudition. I've of course, had the privilege of going through it. But also, the fact that you haven't really held back a lot. We are living in very sensitive times. Was that process? It'd be fascinating to know the process of putting together the book.
Well, it was during the COVID isolation. So I was all alone in my study, 24 hours a day almost, sleeping and eating besides. There was nothing else to do. So I worked on this. Fortunately, these days you can get everything on the internet or other ways electronically. So that was easier to get.
Sure.
And you have a good library at the university. But anyway, I don't know. I'm not as connected to the issues in India, contemporary issues.
Sure.
So in a sense, I was not
Detached a little.
Detached. So in that sense, what I did was what I would have done at any time.
Sure.
My idea was to find out how the persona of Ashoka emerges from his own writings, because that's the only reliable source we have for the man. We have a lot of writings of later times, centuries later often, with strong Buddhist influence, and that's a reimagination of Ashoka often, rather than a real portrayal of Ashoka as he really was. So I was trying to get behind the words of the man to find out who he was. So that was my sort of unique contribution. A lot of people have written on Ashoka from a variety of angles,
of course,
and they're all valid. So my own take on that is this.
We were talking about of course, there's, as you said, the library and books and being surrounded by these ideas. Was there a bit of a eureka moment for you as well, where you during your researches something popped out at you which said, "Oh, Ashoka did this as well, or was this as well"? What can you remember?
Yes, well, there are many moments like that, but one that really I can think of right now is I was wondering how Ashoka gave us two different persons. That's what we see. One is a Buddhist, and he was a Buddhist, he says that he's a Buddhist. And on the other, you have a lot of inscriptions where he talks about Dharma as a much more umbrella or a superstructure that is not connected to any religion of the time. So there is two Ashokas emerging here. And I was trying to see whether there's a chronological development of the person. And I thought I found it. I mean, others may disagree, but
of course.
I think there was a period of about a year and a half after the Kalinga War, which had a tremendous impact on him as a human being.
Sure.
And I think he first sought refuge in being a very good Buddhist. He calls himself an upasaka, which is a devout Buddhist. And I think that was the first. Then he, during this time, he was on a pilgrimage, sort of 8 months, just like Buddhist monks did. And he went home. And I think something happened there. He went home and somebody we call today an intervention came saying, hey, guy, you can't do that, you know.
Yeah, you've got to use the with it vocabulary as well, of course, yeah.
So there may be, or he himself had second thoughts.
Sure.
That propagating Buddhism is not the way to go, because he was the ruler of a multi-ethnic, multicultural, very large, diverse empire.
Sure.
So I think there was a pivot at some point from being a Buddhist or propagating Buddhism that you find in his very first piece of writing, which we call the Minor Rock Edict 1, to the Major Rock Edicts, which never talks about Buddhism per se.
Sure.
So I think that was an interesting chapter of his life that I think I got some insight into. Yeah.
Excellent. Mr. Guha, we're increasingly becoming a society of this or that, and this is very clearly this and that.
Exactly.
There's a bit of a dichotomy between what we read. Also, we are also becoming a place where information and knowledge are being increasingly looked at as, the line between them is blurring, and information has begun to masquerade as knowledge, where it is actually a thread that then binds into a fabric. Is that a bit of a problem, writing books nowadays?
It is. But I think the idea of this series was to show the complexity of historical figures, and to get really fine scholars who are steeped in the primary sources, like Patrick is, who know the languages, know the context, and who bring a certain nuance, who are not ideologues or propagandists, who have not come only to praise or only to bury, but to set this individual in all his contexts. As Walt Whitman famously said, we contain multitudes. It's hard to find an example of a purely good or a purely evil man. The latter may be easier. For example, Adolf Hitler might qualify in that category.
For sure.
But most people, and I think biography is a genre which through which the general reader, for example, the listener to your show, would like to approach history.
Yeah.
For example, the next book in the series is on Sheikh Abdullah by the best leading historian of modern Kashmir, Chitralekha Zuchi, and hopefully you'll have her too here. Now, supposing her book was called A Political and Social History of Post-Colonial Kashmir, it would reach the university libraries.
Yes,
it would reach
absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
But it's Sheikh Abdullah alive, and a colourful, controversial, a very different kind of ruler of Ashoka.
Absolutely.
A very different period. So I think, and I wanted very much to have, because as I said, the biography corner in contemporary Indian bookshops today is colonized by amateurs and propagandists. Okay. And I wanted scholars who can also write well. I mean, one of the great things about Patrick's book is, I say in my preface to the book, I said the ruler as literary stylist is rare, because Ashoka was writing his own words. In that sense, he's like Jawaharlal Nehru. He's a literary stylist.
Sure.
But the ruler as literary stylist is rare. But the scholar as literary stylist may be even more rare, because scholars use jargon, they want to impress their peers.
Yes.
You know exactly what
14-letter words are beautiful.
Yes,
absolutely.
So I think that's the general intention of the series.
Sure.
And I'm delighted that such a wonderful book by such a learned and scholar who's also a master of prose style has begun this book.
Absolutely. Mr. Guha, distancing yourself is becoming a little difficult, is it not? Irrespective of what you might want out of the idea that you've captured, bookended in the book, ideas, agendas get assigned. Social media is very, very influential in that way. Has that made you second guess a little? Or are you...
Not me.
No.
But if I was to reflect on my own, I'm just departing slightly from Patrick's book. But I always tell my readers, you may like or dislike my columns or my short clips on TV or whatever, but do read my books, because the books are not, they're not off the cuff. They're not commenting on today. They're based on research and they're looking about past times, past contexts, past people. And the thrill, the deeper understanding you get from a book, you will never get from, Instagram, Twitter, any website, however good that website may be, any newspaper, however good that newspaper may be. So I think it so happens that, the difference between Patrick and me, one of the many differences is that he works on ancient India. I work on contemporary India.
Sure.
So I'm, in a sense, compelled to intervene sometimes in current debates. Patrick does not face this conflict because he's just doing brilliant scholarship. Though still people will attribute motives. They'll say, unfortunately, attributing motives is very interesting. So one of the things, despite his name, Patrick Olivelle, he's a Sri Lankan.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, supposing that I hope people read that clarification in the author note, because what will happen is this book will come and you and I will say it's a wonderful book, and they'll say, oh, it's a white man.
It's a white man's
man who we write enough. We have white
yes.
man writing about our leaders. What nonsense! Throw it to the dustbin, burn it.
Yeah, the Emerald Isle is certainly not white.
But actually, the fact is, even white men and women say interesting things about India. As Patrick will tell you,
yes.
some of the greatest scholars of ancient India are not, or even of modern India, are not Indians.
It's about passion, right? Is it not? It's not
about understanding, perspective, research, all of that. So yes, that is a issue which any writer but so it's. I think one of the things again, and I don't want to say anything more about myself because this is really about Patrick's book, is a great advantage that a commentator on contemporary politics has. Is for me is that I live so far away from Delhi.
I love this city.
Geographic distance.
Gives you objectivity.
Quite literally the distance that is required. But Mr. Olivelle, the importance of the library. It's been a totem for all of us who've grown up at a certain time. Right. Do you think the relevance of the library is still existence in this connected internet world?
Yes, I think so. It is. Except that the definition of a library has changed somewhat. It's not a physical space often where there are physical books that you can browse and look at. They are available. When I started work, I'm now 80 years old.
Right.
All right. So I started 50 years ago. And they had card indexes that you had to go through.
Yes.
You remember that?
I
right?
remember that.
Okay. Now I can be in my office, my home, look at the internet, choose a book, and my library will deliver it to my office.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
So and of course many of the books now are available in digital form. So you can order it, download it, and have it on your computer.
But the physical act, the physical act itself, does the charm remain? Considering that you're still in touch with people who would probably walk into a library,
Absolutely, and I don't think you can take that away. What is nice with the internet and the electronic forms is that if you want to research something, it is immediately available to you. You don't have to go far away. But a book is a book, and I always think that reading a book, writing on the margins, underlining words, that is the joy of reading, right? Ultimately, I think, and of course doing like Ram does, going to archives. And often those archives are not digitized. So you have to go and actually go through. I have been to Indian archives of manuscripts. The thing that I was told to take with me are baby wipes, because there's so much dust on them that you have to clean your hands whenever you touch these manuscripts, right?
Yeah.
So that's you getting your hands really dirty, doing your work.
Quite literally and figuratively as well, of course. That is important. And the feeling of opening that book and letting those ideas come in. So would it be safe to say that the death knell is a little premature?
Yes. I think that books publishing especially in America during the COVID times went up. So that's a healthy industry.
Absolutely.
So I agree with Patrick. For example, when the Kindle first came out, the prediction was the physical book will disappear.
Yes.
But the physical book is flourished, and the Kindle, the proportion of sales that are digital has plateaued at about 8-10%.
Absolutely.
You know, so, but of course, when it comes to shorter forms, like articles, you know, like short videos, like visuals, then there's no. So I think these are complementary.
Yeah.
The physical book and the digital archive,
Format.
the physical library and the digital archive,
yeah.
they are complementary. I mean, I wish I would never want. I mean, the joy of walking into a great library.
Yes. Yes.
Browsing through the stacks, you know, saying what is
Absolutely.
there, what is not there.
Oh,
you know.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's something you just can't.
We're living in a very dichotomous society, aren't we? It's either black or white, right or wrong. We talked about the death knell for the book being premature, but what would you say about the death knell for the debate, Mr. Guha?
No, the death knell of a civilized debate, you know, there was a great American civil rights leader called John Lewis, who died during the pandemic. And he was greatly inspired by Mahatma Gandhi.
Right.
And he once said, what did you learn from someone like Mahatma Gandhi? And he said, how to disagree without being disagreeable. It's a beautiful line.
Oh, that's
You know,
incredible.
so anyone on Instagram, on Twitter, stroke X, Facebook, in a political rally, making a political speech, how to disagree without being disagreeable. And of course, John Lewis practiced it entirely, but most politicians were like this. I mean, if you look at the relationship between Vajpayee and Nehru, there was mutual affection, some respect,
Yeah.
but political disagreement. Right.
For sure.
Now, now I think that is something we are losing, and part of it is because social media forces you to polarize. Part of it is just the rhetoric of the times. You know, everywhere, left versus right. You know, so for example, you are very quickly typecast, and the nuance is lost. So I think this is again to all your listeners, particularly if they want to maintain their friendships, their romantic relationships, their intellectual relationships, disagree but without being disagreeable.
Sure. That's important. That's important to remember. I also have a question for you, Mr. Guha. Considering that you're also teaching, you're very much, in fact, Mr. Olivelle as well, you're very much in touch with the present generation. Do you think laziness also has a little bit to do with it? Considering that, we had to go to the libraries. Now,
I don't think they're lazy.
No.
That's unfair. That's unfair.
Right.
What it is, Sarthak, is that there are many more distractions. So you can go to watch something on TV, you can go to the internet, you can go here. Our time was our own. So if we like something, we could spend 8 hours of the day on it. It could be playing cricket, it could be learning a musical instrument.
Sure.
Right. So we had, the times was such that there weren't so many distractions, and we could focus and concentrate on what we wanted to do. So some of the young people are the most hardworking and disciplined. So I don't think it's laziness. I think it's just the way things are now much more fragmented, and there's too much noise around and too many distractions around.
Mr. Olivelle?
I want to pick up on one word that you used. Listen. This is the word that Ashoka uses
Okay.
over and over again in a very interesting way.
Right.
In the 12th inscription, rock inscription, when he says that religions, people in different religions, whom we call Pashandas, should interact with each other, come to know each other, learn from each other. And in Sanskrit, the word to learn and the word to listen or hear is the same. Shruta. Bahushruta is much heard, which means much learned. Right?
Okay.
So it's an interesting twist on that.
Wow.
To listening is and you don't listen to yourself generally. You listen to others, right? Which is also then a way of communicating. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that is an important thing that Ashoka brings up in. My fourth part of this book is dedicated to that. Yeah.
That's absolutely excellent. And I think that's also the perfect way to end a conversation about listening and about ideas and about perspectives and about the life of a great man, and not necessarily, one perspective, but many. Ashoka, Portrait of a Philosopher King is the book that we are talking about. It's written by the absolutely incredible Patrick Olivelle. It is part of the series called Indian Lives, series editor, the one and only Ramachandra Guha. It has been such an honor to have had this conversation. Giving the mind something to exercise with and giving it perspective, it opens the mind so much. And for you to have shared so generously of your knowledge means a whole lot to us. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Santha.
you. Thank you very
Santha.
much. Yeah.
You should read the book. It's called Ashoka, Portrait of a Philosopher King, and maybe the ideas will start to flow, which is such a lovely feeling, is it not? We'll come back after this short little break. You don't touch that dial, okay?